Okay, these notes are page 33. Make sure you give it that page number. And the title for this one is going to be Division by Decimals. So the difference here is we're not just dividing decimal numbers, we are actually going to be dividing by decimal numbers. Okay, what I want you to remember, skip a line and put a star. I want you to remember, I want to divide by a whole number. If you remember that you want to divide by a whole number, that will help you remember that you're going to have to move the decimal in order to divide nicely. All right, so we're going to do some examples. Once again, we're going to turn our page so that we make sure our decimals get lined up perfectly. Okay, first one I want you to start with would be 52 divided by 0.4. Now notice what I said. 52 is my dividend. I want to divide by 0.4 or 4/10. Okay, one thing I want you to realize, this is less than 1. When I divide by something less than 1, my answer is going to go the opposite direction I'm used to it. Because how many of these very small pieces can fit in a 52? Way more than 52. So realize that you're going to get an answer that is larger than 52. We're used to dividing and getting answers that are smaller. So this might mess with some of our minds a little bit. Okay, when I say I want to divide by a whole number, this right here is not a whole number. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to times by 10 to both numbers so that I have a whole number, and it's actually going to move my decimal. So if I times this by 10, every time I times by 10, remember how it moved the decimal? But if I times that by 10, I need to times this one by 10 in order to keep them even. So where's the decimal on this one? Right here at the end. So if I times this by 10, my decimal is now right here. Okay, once I've gotten to this point, I need to make sure that my new decimal point lines up with my answer, just like with the notes we did earlier. And then we are just going to divide like usual. So since I'm dividing by a whole number, I kind of can ignore this 0 now. How many times will 4 go into 5? In this place value, it would be 1 time. So we're going to subtract 4, and it's going to leave us with 1. Bring down the 2. 4 goes into 12 how many times? 3. So 3 times 4 is 12. So minus 12 gives me 0. Now here's where I need to pay attention. Because I moved the decimal, it's now here. So that means I have to take care of this place value as well. So I'm going to bring down this 0. How many times will 4 go into 0? 0 times. That is one thing I notice a lot of people messing up on. They think the answer is 13, but it's not, because we have to go to our last place value. So our answer would be 130. Now that makes sense. If this was money, how many groups of 40 cents would it take to make $52? 130 sets of 40 cents is what this is saying. Okay, let's try another problem. Okay, we're going to do 0.009. So let's write that over here. 0.009. And I'm going to divide it by 0.18. Okay, now looking at this, my decimal number here, this is hundreds, this is thousands. Another thing that students have a hard time thinking about is dividing a number smaller by something larger, Just because 0.18 is larger does not mean that that's what the problem asked us for. This one specifically is asking for this very small number to be divided by this. So I want to divide by a whole number, so I'm going to times by 10 until I don't have a decimal number over here anymore. In other words, I want my decimal to be here. So if I do that, I'm going to move it 2 times. That's the same as timesing by 10 twice, or by 100, whichever way you want to look at it. I also need to do the same thing here. 1, 2. Okay, decimal point needs to stay in my answer. Sometimes it's helpful to rewrite the problem, but because we're very limited on journal space here, I'm just going to leave it like this as we do the math. So now I've got to look at how many times 18, because that's what our new number is now that we've times by 10 twice, will go into 0.9. So here, these are just going to be a bunch of zeros, because 18 won't go into 0, 18 won't go into 0, 18 won't go into 0. Will 18 go into 9? Once again, it would be 0. 0 times 18 is 0. So I'm still left with 9. So what did I teach you to do when you're after the decimal on a number? Okay, hopefully you were thinking to annex a 0 over here and continue the problem. That's exactly what we're going to do. Now, how many times will 18 go into 90? 5 times, and that would be exact. 5 times 18 is 90. Only for space did I skip minusing 0, but if you minus 0 from each one of these, you'd be right. So I'm going to subtract 90 from here, and that's going to leave me with nothing left over. And now since this is after the decimal and I have nothing more to work with, there's my final answer. So my final answer is 0.05 or 5 hundredths. Okay, we're going to try one that's going to take a little bit more space. Okay, we're going to do 0.014 divide by, so right over here, let's do 0.014 or 14 thousandths. We're going to divide it by 5.6. Now, looking at this one, you can see that we have a number that is larger than the number we're dividing. That's okay, but you have to make sure that you put them in the right places. A lot of times people flip-flop these in the box. This is the way it was said, so this is the way we need to do it. Also, because we are dividing by something bigger than 1, we know our answer is going to be smaller than this. So I want to divide by a whole number, so I'm going to times this by 10. But if I do it here, I must also do it to this number. Okay, line my decimals up in my answer so I don't get confused about my place values. All right, 56 is my new number. 56 will go into 0, 0 times. 56 will go into 0, 0 times. 56 will go into 1, 0 times. 56 will go into 14, 0 times. Okay. With very little effort, I've already done 4 of my place values. Now I need to look at what do I need to do in order to figure this answer out. I can't have remainders when I'm dealing with decimals. I want a decimal answer. So we're going to annex a 0. 56 into 140 now. So will 56 go into 140? Probably, but I'm not sure how many times. So if I estimate this is close to 50 times 3 maybe. So let's do 56 times 3 and see what we get. Three times 6 is 18. Regroup 1. 3 times 5 is 15. Plus 1 is 168. Looks like that's even an overestimate, so I'm going to do 56 times 2. 2 times 6 is 12. Regroup 1. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. 112, so I'm going to put a 2 here. Now I'm minusing 112. Going to have to borrow from the 4. 10 minus 2 is 8. 3 minus 1 is 2. 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay, now I have 28. Going to annex another 0 here and bring it down. Because these were all zeros, I didn't have to write minus 0, minus 0, minus 0. I could, but I didn't for space because of our limited journal space here. Now 56 into 280, well, if 56 times 3 was 168, I'm going to guess about 5 times. So I'm going to do 56 times 5 to see what I get. 5 times 6 is 30. Regroup 3. 5 times 5 is 25. 26, 27, 28. Oh, nice and perfect. That's what we like to see. So 56 times 5. So I'm going to put a 5 up here. 5 times 56 is 280. And since that is 280, that means that we are finished. I don't have to keep annexing 0 since it's after the decimal. So my answer is actually 25 10,000ths. That is so tiny. But that makes sense if you were splitting a very tiny original number into almost 6 groups. Okay, one last problem we're going to try. We're going to do 0.4 divided into, now notice how I said that, divided into. If I said divided by, it would be inside the box. But since I said divided into, it's going to be outside the box. So 0.4 is what is being divided into 25. Okay, I'm going to give you a second to think what you think you're going to do. Okay, hopefully you first said I want to divide by a whole number. How do we do that? We times both numbers by 10 so that we can move the decimal. So if I move the decimal here once, I need to do it here, but where's the decimal on 25? At the end. So if I'm going to move it once, what needs to be written here? 0. Okay, if the decimal is here now, then that means it's right there in my quotient as well. So make sure those line up. Okay, the only thing different about what we've been doing today than what we did previously was we have a decimal here. And so it's all about moving the decimal. From here, you should know what to do. So now this is 4. How many times will 4 go into 2? 0 times. I can write 0. 0 times 4 is 0. I can show minusing the 2. Or if you understand that you just move to the 25, that's okay. Next place value. 4 goes into 25. 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. That leaves me with 1. 10. 4 goes into 10 how many times? 2. 2 times 4 is 8 minus 8. See how I'm keeping my place values lined up? Gives me 2. Now from here, I can't say remainder 2. That's not what it wants me to do. If I'm dealing with decimal numbers, I need decimal answers. So I'm going to annex a 0 and just keep going. 4 goes into 20 how many times? 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Now, because I ended up with 0 remaining pieces, I am done. My answer is 62.5. Once again, this original number was less than 1, so it had to go in there more times than 25. Okay. Make sure your handwriting is nice and neat and you have all the notes I have.